Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for a very kind introduction. A special honor to be introduced also by an Italian student. And thank you very much for your presence here today. And apologies for the delay, but as I was explaining, we started already this morning with a full list of bilateral meetings, so I guess this is how the European Union also exercises a global role. So thanks to Singapore for hosting such a relevant meeting in these days. We are literally on the other side of the world compared to Europe. And even if I know that there are European students apart from a well-known Italian one in this room, and I know that the links among universities and centers of studies are very intense. But geographically, we are on the other side of the world. At the first glance, Singapore and the European Union may seem to have very little in common. Apparently, a city-state and a continental union don't have much to share. But I believe the opposite is true. Although we are incredibly far apart geographically, we stand on the same side of global politics. We both believe that international disputes should be settled peacefully through diplomacy and dialogue. We share an interest to make international trade both free and fair. We are both perceived as honest brokers in international negotiations. We are reliable, credible, predictable, and consistent partners on the global stage. So in very confused moment for global politics, the European Union and Singapore are somehow natural partners. And I believe we must invest in this partnership, because we don't only share the same values, but many of the same interests. Peace and stability in this part of the world matters to Europe. There are 12,000 European businesses who have made a home here in Singapore. The European Union is the second largest trading partner for Southeast Asia after China, and we are by far the largest foreign investor in ASEAN countries. I know the European Union may appear as slow and complex. By the way, complexity is part of life. So let me say this is even an asset. Being complex ourselves, we're well positioned to understand and manage complexity wherever we find it in the world, and we find quite some complexity in the world of today. So sometimes, indeed, we do take our time to take decisions, to go through our procedures, we're 28, but sometimes we're also fast. I can give you the example of one of our military operations, Operation Sophia, that is active in the Mediterranean. It was established in less than 1 month, from the moment when we took the decision to the moment when our assets were at sea, with military men and women acting under the European Union flag. But in any case, in a world that is terribly unpredictable and unstrategic, you can count on us as a predictable and reliable partner, always. In a nutshell, it might be complex, it might sometimes take time, but with the European Union, you know what you get. And this is good, I think, for both the European Union and our partners. We have a clear interest in peace, security, and in economic growth on this side of the world. A peaceful and prosperous Asia-Pacific is an economic opportunity for the European Union as well. So we're looking to get more engaged with Singapore, with this region. If you look at all we have done in recent years, the direction of our work is very clear, as certified by the number of contacts. I'll give you just a few examples based on my personal experience in this last 3.5 years in my mandate. We hold regular summits with our 4 Asian strategic partners. I am myself on my 16th mission to Asia since the beginning of my mandate, in the end of 2014. And our bilateral trade agreement is now finalized, and the goal of getting it signed is coming closer. Singapore will be, I say Singapore because I know that many of you in this room are not from Singapore themselves, which is in itself a testimony of how open and international this place is, which is a value that we also share. So I was saying, Singapore will be the first country in Southeast Asia to get free access to the largest market in the world, the European Union one. We also plan to sign a free trade agreement with Vietnam before the end of this year, and we hope Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, the Philippines, and others will follow soon. We've also increased our engagement with ASEAN as a whole, as an organization, and indeed the whole of Asia. Only a few weeks ago, we signed the biggest free trade agreement ever with Japan, linking closely the second and the fourth economies in the world. So let me say this very clearly. Trade wars have no winners, they have only losers. On the contrary, a good agreement can bring benefits to both sides, a true win-win solution. And in the European Union, we do believe in win-win solutions. They are the only sustainable, real solutions to our problems in the world. But our cooperation, in particular with this part of Asia, but with Asia in general, is not only about trade. As I am among students, let me mention that we're financing an exchange program called SHARE to give students in this part of the world the same opportunities that our European students enjoy thanks to our Erasmus program. I was an Erasmus student myself. I can witness testimony the fact that it's probably the most successful European Union project ever initiated, and looking forward to another decades of successful Erasmus, but also other outside of the European Union students and researchers exchanges programs. For us, these are key elements of our people-to-people contacts and developing understanding across the world. Here in Singapore, you've built the strength of this country on the internal diversity and the openness to the world. Cultural and economic exchanges have made Singapore strong. So whenever you will seek to expand such cultural and economic exchanges, you will be able to count on the European Union as your partner and as your friend. The European Union is always ready to invest in this. Openness, exchanges, links. It's the way in which we have learned from our history how to overcome difficulties in the past, to invest in our diversity and accept it as a point of strength. The European Union's engagement in this region is not new and is here to stay. One of our first security missions abroad was back in 2005, a monitoring mission to accompany the peace process in Aceh, in Indonesia, that we launched back then. Since then, our security cooperation with the Southeast Asia has grown much stronger. We are working to accompany peace processes. I just mentioned Myanmar as the most recent and probably striking example of our times. We're working together with Vietnam and Australia on maritime security, and we took part in military exercises with ASEAN. So just to mention a few examples, I know that the European Union is perceived as mainly an economic and trade player, but we are expanding our role also in the security domain. Not only the hard traditional security, but also the non-traditional security field, from cyber to maritime to hybrid threats. As I said, I know that when you think of the European Union, you see the economic power, but you don't see us as a military power. That's natural. Europe's soft power has always been strong, and it's here to stay. But taken together, our member states have the second largest military budget in the world. This is a number that doesn't come to your mind often, but if you take the EU member states' budget on defense and military, we are indeed the second military power in the world. And over the last couple of years, in the European Union, we have taken historic, unprecedented steps so that European Union member states can invest together their defense budgets and be a more effective, a more powerful, I would say, global security provider. At the same time, we will keep our European way to defense and security, which means that we know that sometimes you might need military means, but military means alone would never be sufficient to solve any of the crises of our times. We will never use our military strength to threaten or to impose anything. The more dangerous our world becomes, the more we will invest in international cooperation, in the protection of international law, and in multilateralism. This is our way to security. It's what I often call sustainable security, that invests, yes, in the hard core, but also on human rights, rule of law, democracy, cooperation, and multilateralism. This is the European way. It's the result, I would say, of the lessons we have learned from our history. The European Union was born when Europeans that were fighting each other for thousands of years, sometimes exporting war in the world, realized that it was much more convenient to make business together rather than to fight each other. It was as simple as that at the beginning, and it proved to be quite successful because we've become the most developed economic part of the world with a certain level of respect of rights, from social to economic to political rights, that has probably no precedent, no parallel in the world. I know I'm describing quite a rosy picture, but I know the Q&A session will give us time to get into the less rosy elements. So I take advantage of this privilege I have to kick off the debate. We stand clearly on one side. We stand on the side of more cooperative global order, always. We stand on the side of international rules, including on delicate issues such as the South China Sea. This is our culture and this is our interest. Take the case of North Korea. For years, even when this was not so common, we have been pushing for two things: the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula as the only way to bring peace and stability to that part of the world. But we also said that denuclearization has to be complete, verifiable, and reversible, and that this has to be achieved through dialogue, diplomacy, in a peaceful manner. This was our position years ago, this is our current position, and this will continue to be our position in the months and years ahead, being quite consistent on this. And the Singapore summit on June the 12th has generated, I believe, great hopes all across the world, and I'm very grateful to Singapore for the commitment to peace through diplomacy that we share. I believe we have a collective duty now to accompany the negotiations in all possible ways, just like Singapore did by hosting the summit. And for this reason, we Europeans will continue with our policy of critical engagement with North Korea. This means that we combine sanctions and pressure with open channels of communication. That's how you make a good deal. And we are now doing all we can as Europeans, but also together with our international partners around the world, to preserve the nuclear deal with Iran. And we will work with our partners all around the world so that legitimate business with Iran can continue. We're doing so because the deal is good for our collective security and for our European security, but also to serve the principle that international agreements must be respected once they are achieved by all. We may be an imperfect union, nothing is perfect, I'm afraid, but you will always know where we stand, and you will always know you can count on us. Our unity, our strength, our reliability are assets, as far as I see it, not just for Europeans, but for the whole world. This is who we are as a global actor. I see a demand for partnership with the European Union in these months much stronger than in previous years. I understand why. A credible, reliable, consistent partner for the rest of the world, for Asia in particular. An indispensable partner in a global world, in a moment of global confusion. And I believe that Europe and Asia are global partners for global challenges, but also for getting the best out of global opportunities that are there. This is also the theme of the summit of Asian and European leaders, which we have the honor to host in October in Brussels. So, looking forward to working even more closely together, and let me say, counting on the energy, the vision, the strength, and the brightness of a younger generation that across Asia and Europe, I know, is very much ready to work together in a global manner. I thank you very much. Looking forward to it.